It started with something small, a quiet suburban home, a missing man, and a backyard that didn't quite look right. For more than a year, everyone believed Michael Giles was simply busy with life, sending occasional messages and staying out of sight. Nothing unusual, until investigators noticed a concrete slab poured in the middle of his yard for no clear reason. What they uncovered beneath it would expose one of the most chilling and manipulative crimes Texas detectives had ever seen. At the center of it all was a woman who appeared calm, intelligent, and completely ordinary. But behind that calm exterior was a plan so twisted it nearly fooled everyone, including the justice system itself. His disappearance had been surrounded by confusion. His family believed he was simply busy with work and life. They were receiving text messages from him occasionally, short replies that made it seem like he was still around. Nothing alarming, nothing urgent. But investigators knew something was wrong the moment they stepped into the backyard of his Garland, Texas home. Right in the middle of the yard sat a concrete slab that looked oddly placed, almost like it had been poured in a hurry. It didn't match the rest of the yard or the patio. It looked out of place. When detectives finally obtained a search warrant and broke through the concrete, the truth was horrifying. Beneath the slab lay the decomposed body of Michael Giles. He had been shot in the head. The discovery instantly turned what had been a missing person concern into a full-blown homicide investigation. Now detectives needed to figure out who had access to the house, who had motive, and who had the opportunity to hide a body beneath freshly poured concrete. One of the first leads came from a man named Robert Austin, who had been renting the house after Michael disappeared. Austin had originally found the property through a rental listing and moved in with his family. The rent was reasonable, the neighborhood was quiet, and the property was being managed through a real estate company. But the supposed owner of the home, Quinita Harris, was someone almost nobody had ever met in person. She claimed to have inherited the property and was managing everything from out of state in Michigan. Communication with her was strange from the very beginning. Most conversations happened through emails, phone calls, or messages passed through the property manager. And even then, things didn't quite add up. She avoided sending documentation proving ownership. She delayed signing management agreements. She frequently made excuses about why paperwork couldn't be completed. To most people, but to experienced investigators, it looked like someone carefully avoiding verification. Robert Austin's experience living in the house only deepened the mystery. One day, not long after moving in, he heard voices coming from the backyard. When he stepped outside, he saw a woman he had never met before standing with a contractor. She explained she was the owner of the home and that she wanted to pour a concrete slab in the yard. Austin even suggested making the slab larger and extending it into the patio area. It would have looked more natural that way, but the woman refused. She insisted on pouring the slab exactly where she wanted it, just a narrow section of concrete placed oddly in the yard. At the time, Austin didn't think much of it. People make strange renovation decisions all the time. But months later, after strange phone calls, missing documents, fake identities, and suspicious emails began piling up, Austin started to feel that something about the situation, an email warning the tenant not to dig in the backyard, it seemed like an oddly specific request for someone managing a rental property. Why would anyone care whether a tenant dug in the yard? But once the body was discovered beneath that exact spot, the meaning of that email became chillingly clear. As detectives continued digging into the case, they learned something even more disturbing. Michael Giles hadn't simply disappeared. His identity had been stolen. His bank accounts had been accessed, his money drained, and his assets slowly liquidated while someone continued pretending he was alive. Investigators traced the financial activity back to one person, Quinita Harris. The woman who claimed to own the house, the woman who arranged the rental, the same woman who had personally supervised the pouring of the concrete slab covering Michael Giles's grave. What detectives were beginning to uncover wasn't just a murder. It was an elaborate scheme involving identity theft, financial fraud, and careful manipulation designed to keep Michael's death hidden for as long as possible. And the deeper investigators looked into Quinita Harris's life, the more disturbing the story became. Because Michael Giles wasn't just a random victim. He had known Quinita for years, and their relationship would reveal exactly how she managed to get close enough to plan the perfect crime. As investigators dug deeper into the life of Michael Giles, the pieces of the puzzle slowly began falling into place. What initially looked like a confusing disappearance was starting to reveal a carefully orchestrated betrayal. Michael Giles wasn't just a random victim. He had known Quinita Harris for nearly a decade. Their relationship had started years earlier when Quinita was going through a divorce. Michael, a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, known for his discipline and quiet lifestyle, had crossed paths with her during that difficult time. Over the years, the two developed an on-and-off relationship. Friends and coworkers described Michael as extremely private. He kept his personal life separate from work and rarely spoke about relationships. But what investigators would later learn was that Quinita had slowly worked her way into his life, gaining his trust over time. Eventually, she began dating another man named DeAndre Knight, while still maintaining contact with Michael. At some point in 2006, Quinita traveled to Garland, Texas to visit Michael at his home. The visit appeared completely normal from the outside. Neighbors didn't report anything unusual. There were no signs of a struggle, no loud arguments, nothing that suggested violence had occurred. But inside that house, everything changed. Investigators later determined that Quinita shot Michael in the head inside his own home. After killing him, she dragged his body to the backyard. There, she buried him and later covered the grave with the concrete slab that tenants would eventually notice. The plan didn't stop there. Once Michael was gone, Quinita began executing the next phase of her scheme. She stole his identity. Using his personal documents, bank information, and access to his accounts, she began draining his finances. Over time, more than $200,000 was siphoned away through various transactions. She even continued sending messages pretending to be Michael, convincing his family that he was still alive and simply busy. Meanwhile, the house where Michael had been murdered was quietly rented out to unsuspecting tenants. For over a year, no one realized that the man who owned the property was buried beneath the backyard. When investigators finally began closing in on Quinita, she didn't panic. Instead, she attempted something almost unbelievable. She tried to frame someone else for the murder. Police soon discovered that Quinita had met a woman named Elizabeth Flores while they were both in jail on unrelated matters. Through conversations, Quinita learned details about Elizabeth's family, including her teenage daughter Erica. Quinita contacted Erica with what sounded like an exciting job opportunity. She told the young woman she had been hired for a private investigator position connected to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The job sounded official, professional, and well paid. Erica was told she would be paid $150 just for showing up to an assignment. But the assignment wasn't a job, it was a trap. Quinita provided Erica with a scripted confession to memorize. She instructed her exactly what to say, how to pause, when to cry, and even how to describe the shooting. The plan was for Erica to walk into a courthouse and confess to Michael Giles's murder. If Erica's confession created doubt, Quinita believed it could weaken the case against her. It was a bold and incredibly manipulative move, but the plan quickly unraveled. Detectives immediately noticed inconsistencies in Erica's story, and during questioning, it became clear that she had been coached. Once investigators separated Erica from her mother and carefully walked through the details, the truth began to emerge. Erica revealed the entire scheme. She described how the mysterious woman had given her a fake identity, a script, and instructions on how to perform the confession. She even explained how she had been told to hold a pillow while pretending to fire the gun, details that were disturbingly close to the real murder. Detectives realized just how close Quinita had come to manipulating the justice system. With the evidence mounting against her, the case moved toward trial. But before the full trial could unfold, Quinita Harris made a sudden decision. She pleaded guilty. The court sentenced her to 50 years in prison for the murder of Michael Giles. Her accomplice, DeAndre Knight, pleaded guilty to fraud and theft charges connected to the stolen money and received time served. But even after being convicted, Quinita's manipulative behavior didn't stop. Years later, in 2015, prison officials discovered that a court order had been submitted, reducing her sentence to just 8 years. If the document had been legitimate, she would have been immediately eligible for parole. There was just one problem. The order was fake. Quinita had forged the judge's signature. Even from inside prison walls, she was still attempting to manipulate the system. After the forgery was discovered, she was classified as a serious security risk and placed in solitary confinement. The woman who once orchestrated one of the most elaborate deception schemes Texas investigators had ever seen would remain exactly where the justice system had placed her, behind bars. And it all started with a single concrete slab in a quiet backyard. If that slab had never been questioned, the truth might have remained buried forever. If you found this case as shocking and unbelievable as it sounds, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves true crime stories. And here's something I'd love to hear from you. Do you think Quinita truly believed her plan would work? Or was she simply desperate enough to try anything to escape justice? Let me know what you think in the comments below.